Hi, everyone.
Hey,
Welcome to the middle of July. It's me, Tom, and Tamara. We're here to talk to you guys about this week's M365 Pulse. Jen is on vacation, enjoying life to the fullest, that jerk. So she will not be joining us this week, but we love her. So it will just be the three of us kind of running down the updates in the Microsoft 365 world. A lot's been going on. Inspire was, I think, last week, technically.
I believe so, yeah.
So a whole bunch of new conference updates and stuff coming out. So lots of various things going on, but as always, we're going to kind of run down our favorite updates from the week and the changes to the roadmap. Remember, there's technically 4 categories. We're going to start with in development, which is stuff that has just been added to the roadmap. We'll move on from there to rolling out, which means it's somewhere in its release cycle, whether it's first release or preview or something along those lines, all the way up to general availability for everyone. And finally, launch, which means everyone should have it at that point. And every now and then we'll have a couple canceled items to discuss. But besides that, we're excited for you guys to join us, and we can kind of go ahead and get started. I'm going to actually let Tamara go first, Tom. So,
Good
Tamara, would
move.
you like to discuss anything in development that kind of caught your eye?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Couple things. SharePoint, the ability to remove the title region gradient. So Microsoft is now adding a new toggle for the title region that allows page authors to remove or add a gradient to the title region. I think it's just going to make the pages look a little bit more professional.
Right.
And then in Teams, in Microsoft Teams, we've got auto expiration of meeting recordings stored in OneDrive and SharePoint. So this is moving out to GCC and worldwide, and it's slated for September of 2021. So newly created team meeting recordings in OneDrive and SharePoint will be automatically deleted by the service based on a default Teams policy setting. So the Teams admins will be able to modify the default meeting recording expiration time via a setting in the Teams admin portal, or by modifying the policy attributes using PowerShell. So newly created meeting recordings in OneDrive and SharePoint will be automatically deleted after this point unless the meeting owner extends the expiration. So meeting owners will be notified about expired recordings and may extend the expiration date on OneDrive and SharePoint. So compliance policies will override the expiration setting. So I think that's great. I think that's really going to help us manage size
Yeah.
Yeah,
of what we're
our
storing.
tenant ran out of space in Stream like last week or the
Wow.
week before. Because I mean, if you think about it, we're a company of basically engineers and IT consultants that record meetings and stuff. And so we actually went to do a recording and have the recording saved, and what we're doing for this, and just got a failure at the end of the recording that there wasn't enough space. It's just kind of like, well, that doesn't work. I think this is really cool. Something we could have used, I don't know, about a month ago. So
Too
nice
funny.
to see. Tom, what about you?
Well, I'm glad you let her go first because of the 3 things that I had flagged, she covered 2 of them. So,
Oh,
and if I would have gone first, I would have covered 2 of them. And yeah, that would not have bode well for our relationship after the call. So the other one that I had flagged, and a lot of the other stuff is like geeky stuff that I'm sure you're going to touch on, is Microsoft Teams, paging on Teams phone. I find this kind of intriguing. So it's basically a walkie-talkie app on your Teams phones. So you're going to have instant push-to-talk, or PTT as they call it, communications for your team. I kind of find that nice. I can see where that's probably going to be more useful for, hey, I'm out in the field, I need to call my home base. I'm talking with the office manager or something. I just want to have that back and forth. I think that'll be really cool. You may not have to carry around a walkie-talkie anymore, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It might be fun to play with too. If you're in an office and everybody's in the office, it may not really come into play. But again, it could be fun to play with. And just so I have something else to talk about here, for all the people in our audience that speak Korean, Russian, Hungarian, Arabic, or Hebrew, suggested reply language support is coming to Outlook on the web and Outlook for iOS and Android. They're looking out for you. So yeah, those are the only 2 real things that I've got that I Thought
I
that
actually used the suggested reply language more than I thought I would going in.
It's kind of
so
nice.
I like seeing them expanded into other languages. Like fairly often, I'll just get I'll get an email that I need to reply quickly, and they'll have like basic like thanks, got it, or I'll get back to you tomorrow. Something like it's pretty good about pulling that stuff up, which just saves time if I'm replying to an email on my phone. So
and they're pretty appropriate too, which is nice.
They are. I'll say a couple nerdy ones just so we have that covered, and then I'll also go ahead and give a shout out. If you are an Edge user, they added a lot of stuff to Edge in the in development in this week's rollout. Everything from starting all the way in v.93 all the way to v.97 of various updates and stuff they're doing. I'm not going to go over all of them because there's seriously like 15. But if you're an Edge user and you wanted, and you're want to stay in the know on what's going on or what's happening around your browser, just know there's a lot of stuff they added to the roadmap. I'd encourage you guys to go check out the roadmap and look at Edge specifically to try to get an idea of what's going on. But the two kind of nerdy things I'll touch on. First one, they're basically adding DKIM domains to their advanced delivery feature, which is stuff you can do around like phishing simulations and stuff like that. So up until now, if you wanted to run phishing simulations on your domain, you could go through and do it on any sending domain you had. Well, now you can also do it with DKIM mail without getting too deep into it. DKIM is one of the more secure ways that you can go through and set up your domain for sending. It stands for Domain Key Identified Mail. It basically allows you to go through and do things or basically take ownership of your domain, kind of have almost like, I like to explain to my customers, it's almost like you're putting a wax seal on an email when you're sending it out of like, oh, this is my crest, and I can go through and say what it is. So they're adding that to the advanced delivery options or features, which is something cool to see that you typically see with like phishing domains. And the other thing that I'll mention is in the Microsoft Compliance Center, they've had something for a little bit now called communication compliance. It basically looks at the way your users are talking together to make sure that they're not leaking anything they shouldn't or violating anything along those lines. That's always covered the chat functionality that's been in Teams, but they're extending it now. So say Tom and I are talking in Teams chat and he links me something from SharePoint. Now, not only will the chat we're doing back and forth be covered, but the file that he links in from SharePoint or OneDrive will now also be covered under the same communication compliance rules. So cool to see.
Very nice.
Anyone else have anything they wanted to mention?
Yeah, two other things I wanted to mention, and this is specifically for GCC High and DoD, and it has to do with breakout rooms. So for GCC High, the breakout room timer, room retention, and participant reassignments is rolling out for GCC High. And what that means is organizers can now set a timer for breakout rooms from the breakout room settings. After the timer has expired, rooms will automatically close and the participants will come back into the main meeting. Room assignment retention provides the ability to persist room configuration and assignment over multiple sessions. So with participant reassignment capability, the organizer will now be able to move joined participants across rooms and main meeting, also when the rooms are opened. And then also for DoD is breakout room presenter support, which means it extends the management of breakout rooms to specific presenters. So that's rolling out to DoD. I know my clients are going to be very excited about that. So I wanted to bring that up.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, I think we can probably go ahead and move to rolling out unless there's anything else you had to talk about, Tom?
Nope, I'm good.
Cool. Well, we'll let you start with rolling out if you'd like, sir.
Yay. There's two that I have flagged, which there's only 6 total. So I'm going to pick one of them. Microsoft Teams translate slideshow content. So this is a feature, and it does affect worldwide GCC and GCC High. And it translates the slideshow content privately in a Teams meeting with PowerPoint Live. So I think the way this works is that if you're doing a presentation using PowerPoint Live and it's looking at the content that you have on your slide, if you want to translate that from, say, English to, say, Italian, it will actually do that for you privately. And it's not just giving you the verbiage or the transcription of what's being said and translating it. I think it actually translates the slide itself.
It does, and it's pretty cool.
Then I'm thinking that is a really cool feature, and I want to play with it here now that I know it's enrolling out, see if it's actually showing up. So again, it doesn't do it for everybody in there. It's just, I'm one of 1,000 people watching this. I can sit there and say, I would prefer to see this in a language that I'm more native in, say Italian, and you're going to have it show up. So cool feature, and I really hope that works out the way that it sounds like it. So that's
Tamara?
it for me.
I got nothing.
You got nothing.
Well, then in that case, Word, better collaboration with modern comments for Mac. If you're a Mac user and you've been upset the fact that Word doesn't allow you to do modern comments because Mac Word client things don't get the love, now they do. You're going to be more productive with app mention notifications. Go Macs.
Dude, Tom just pounced on that one. As soon as he saw an opening and he knew he was going to be clear with his significant other, he's like, I'm going.
That's pretty much it. I thought I can get away with this one.
You guys make it out like I beat him or something off camera. I do not hit. Hitting is wrong.
For the record, I think every guy here can understand the idea of happy wife, happy life. It's very much, we don't think it's abusive. We just understand that Tom has the wherewithal to understand that number one priority is making sure you're good.
And he always does. He's
Good job, Tom.
fabulous.
So I'll mention a couple nerdy things for us, and then we can move on to launched. But two things that I saw in here that I thought were kind of cool. First and foremost, new DLP alert management dashboard for the GovCloud. This is something that's been on for commercial for a little bit, which is basically if you want to set up how you're doing alerts for DLP violations and stuff like that, it's a little bit different now, and going through and managing those is a little different. Most of my clients use this to some way, shape, or form, so always happy to see the new policy being updated and coming out to our Gov customers, so happy for them. The other thing that I noticed on there was advanced eDiscovery hold optimization. So basically, if you're using advanced eDiscovery, there's different options you have, but ultimately, just like normal eDiscovery, one of the first options you get once you have your search content done, or once you've scoped out the search, is you can put that data on hold, right? So say there's a legal case going on and Plan is being sued because of some project I was being on. Well, they would probably go through and do a search and scope everything for that project. And once they think they had all the content searched, they'd put a hold on it just in case there was anything relevant for the case that it needed to be. Well, they're basically giving better improvements to that process that are specifically going to increase the amount of time or limits related to doing the holds to bring it more in line with what you can go through and do. So just nice to see new features coming out. That's basically step one anytime you're going through and doing this type of stuff, is making sure you have the data retained, because chances are if you're doing eDiscovery, it's because of some reason. I've definitely had customers come to me before and say, hey, we realized there might be some sort of legal action going, and we talked to our lawyer, and they basically told us, well, you need to go save everything right now. And so nice to see that coming out. And that's actually coming out, which is good to see for worldwide GCC, DoD, and GCC High. So it's coming out to everyone, which is nice.
Very cool.
All right, well, Tamara, you want to go ahead and take us into launched?
Sure. Something I'm really excited about, which is like on Adam's side of geeky,
Okay.
is SharePoint. Huh?
That's okay.
Yeah. Is SharePoint administration Azure Active Directory Global Reader role? So Microsoft has introduced a new Azure Active Directory built-in role called Global Reader. And the Global Reader is the read-only counterpart to Global Admin. So users in this role can read settings and administrative information across Microsoft 365 services, but cannot take management actions. So when the Global Reader role initially launched, it did not support the SharePoint Admin Center. And now, a Global Reader will see SharePoint listed under the left pane, and admins in admin centers in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So users who are assigned this role will have read-only access to all info and settings in the new SharePoint Admin Center. And this feature is related to the global admin role that was introduced in the Message Center back in September of 2019. So I always get curious about what the settings are as I'm trying to troubleshoot issues. And having this role is going to make it a lot easier to do that and speak intelligently to your global administrator about what your actual needs are. So I'm really, really woefully excited
yes.
about this.
Probably unnaturally so, but I can understand.
And then the one other thing that gets me really excited is being able to create a task from a message in Microsoft Teams. So quickly create tasks from any Microsoft Teams chat or channel conversation without having to switch apps or windows. So you select the more options, or as Tom likes to call them, drama dots, on a Teams message to choose create task, and then you track it in the tasks app in Teams. So those are the two things I'm really excited about and launched.
Yeah, that one was really cool. I did a 1 minute office magictip.com one for that one today. And it's like, this is something I've been watching to see when it rolls out, because there's a lot of times I see stuff in chat channels. I'm like, I need to follow up on that. And then whoosh, it's gone. Where now I can just say, yep, let's go ahead and make that a task, and I live in my task list. So that's a really awesome change. The other one that I had also done a 1 minute officemagic.com tip on earlier this week was app mentions in comments for Microsoft lists. So if you are using comments in lists, that's really nice. But unfortunately, if you put a comment in there and the other person really isn't paying attention to the little icon that says, hey, this has comments, they're probably not going to see that there's something in there that may be something that they need to pay attention to. Well, now you can app mention them in the comment, and not only does it make it easier for them to see that their name's been mentioned, but they also get a notification that says, hey, you've been app mentioned in this particular list item. Here's a link to it. So I think that that is a really good change, especially for people who are using the comment feature in list items. And that's rolling out, and actually, I'm sorry, that's launched to SharePoint, GCC High, DoD, GCC Germany, worldwide. Basically, if you use Microsoft 365, you should have it now. So that's a good one.
Anything else you want to talk about, Tom?
In Microsoft Word, there's an updated Add from Files experience in Word Online, making it easier to find and reuse content across your company. I don't know what that looks like. I didn't know what it looked like before, so I really can't speak to this. But hey, I made it a yellow thing on the spreadsheet, so I'm done with launch now.
I had two things I wanted to mention, and this is for DoD GCC High, and that is increasing chat size from 300 to 1,000 participants, and also large meeting support for GCC High, which means you can hold interactive meetings and webinars with up to 1,000 people now.
Sure.
So that's big for DoD, because live events, which you would usually use if you had over 300 participants in a meeting, you can only have 15 concurrent live events going on at once. So and with how big the DoD clients are, the chances of that happening are pretty great. So this will really help decrease the need to have live events.
Right. Cool.
So there's two nerdy things I wanted to mention. Both of them are kind of interesting, and I'm interested to see once I actually get my hands on and try them. So the first one is, and so for companies that don't do this, they're not going to care about this at all. But companies that do, I think this puts them in a very interesting situation. They are now rolling out worldwide that admins can choose to allow their users to select their Office update channel. So if you don't deal with Office channels and how that whole process works, there's multiple different sections you can choose of basically how quickly features are released to your Office suite. And so you can say, I want the latest and the greatest right away. You can say, okay, I want it to come out once a month, for instance. You can basically say, oh, I want to be conservative and wait for it to come out. Now, large organizations, when you look at traditional application and software management, would typically go through and have decisions on their side based on how they want to do different releases. Most of the time, they'd have probably in a large organization a fairly conservative approach where they're going to wait till it's already been released for most people so they know if there's any security flaws or know if there's any performance issues or stuff like that. Or they might even have a group of like pilot users that get the update first, so that way they can identify if there's any issues so they can choose, well, let's not roll this out to the rest of our users. An organization I worked with out in Australia that was like 20,000 people did that, right? They'd have select people in the various roles of the company basically get the software updates about a month before everyone else. And then they would say, oh, well, suddenly this like, random Excel program that I needed that's only supported in a certain thing no longer works. So they know, okay, well, we can't roll that out to the other people that need that program. Well, so they're now making it so that admins can choose to basically defer that option to their users. Now, the reason I say this is interesting is, one, I think it's kind of a cool concept that, like, to a certain extent, I can almost see like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, if you have someone who's always complaining about this or doing this, it kind of be like, all right, you're in charge of this now. It's no longer my problem. But at the same time, too, any organization that's been large enough to care about this is normally pretty protected about what they do with it. So I can't see a lot of the people that are already taking advantage of managing their release cycles going through and allowing the users to do that. So I think it's an interesting release that they came out, and I think it'll be interesting to see what's the sweet spot for users that take advantage of that.
Right.
And then the other thing that I wanted to mention I thought was kind of cool. So they're now releasing a new, what they're calling network connectivity in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So if any one of you guys have ever gone through and had to troubleshoot basically network problems related to Microsoft 365 performance, it's a huge pain in the ass. Like, I don't know another way to put it. Like, going through and like, you're getting spotty connectivity, or like I've had stuff where I've been working with customers or agencies that are in a pretty locked down system for security based on who they are, and like they're having issues with like getting the updates to reach out and having just their Office desktop clients check in properly, so that way they don't get disabled after 30 days. And anytime you have to go through and deal with something on network connectivity, it's always been quite a bit of a pain. Most of the time I've done this, it's involved getting a Premier ticket to Microsoft, and eventually you have one of those conference calls where it's like, all right, you have like a level 4 Microsoft engineer, you're there, you have someone from the network team on the side, and you have someone from the endpoint team on the customer side, and you have someone from the software team on the customer side. And it's like a 4-hour meeting where it's like, well, it might be this. All right, well, that falls into, Jay. Jay's in charge of the software. Jay, can you go see if you can give us permissions? And like, it's just been a mess. And so basically what they're doing is they're releasing what they're calling this network connectivity in the admin center that is going to give you tools to go through and run on your system, designed ideally to be run at like a specific office location, although this can be done organizational wide as well. And it's going to give you a number score between 0 and 100, basically saying how good is your network design, or what's the impact of your network design on your user experience. I'm assuming with the lower number being worse, the higher number being better. But regardless of which way the scale goes, you're basically going to get a value based on how good your network is. Now, they've put together this design and this test and these metrics based primarily on support cases that have gone up to Microsoft, where they found trends in certain features or certain settings that have impacted the user's ability to get stuff done in the Microsoft 365 world on their metrics. So as someone who's dealt with several large escalations on this, that kind of goes into the point where you just kind of have like all right, let's have a meeting of the minds where we all sit here and try to figure out what's going on. Having a specific tool set that's designed to go through and address that and try to get to the core bottom of it, I think that's really cool. I see this as potentially being a very powerful tool to use when you're trying to go through and either deal with performance issues for a customer, or when customers are coming new into 365 and you're trying to address what problems are going on. So this is one of the things I'm more excited about seeing that I haven't seen in a while. I'll be interested to get my hands on it and see what it actually does.
Well, it sounds like that would be kind of nice too if you have your environment set up one way and you've got a score of say 70, and you go, okay, we're going to make this particular network change. Once you do that, you're thinking, okay, how did it affect, or how is it affecting everything? Run it again. Did you go from 70 to 75? Did you drop from 70 to 55? it sounds like that would be a good way to have a baseline score that you could measure changes against too.
Yeah, definitely interesting to see from our side. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we briefly touch on the canceled?
Nope, I'm
Nope,
good.
I'm good.
So we do have several things mentioned and canceled for the first time, and for the most part, you're not seeing like a lot of necessarily these have been duplicates. So either of you guys want to each take two and just mention them real quick?
Sure, I can do that.
Go for it, Tom.
So Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, the ability to ignore email signature or disclaimer. So it's supposed to provide the ability within communication compliance to define text that should be ignored during the policy evaluations to avoid false positive. They don't give a reason as to why they canceled it, but they canceled it. Seems like that's something that would have made sense to have, but maybe they were having problems figuring out how to implement it. Who knows? But for the time being, it's canceled and off the roadmap. The other compliance center item that they have out there is the insider risk management handoff. So this is introducing a new remediation action in communications compliance that will enable a user to be added to an existing insider risk management policy for further evaluation. Again, they don't give any explanation as to why it's canceled. It's just canceled. So if that was something you were looking for, you might want to change your expectations because it's not going to be there.
This is a complete guess on my part. I'm wondering if they're having a hard time getting this to work the way that they wanted. Because as you said, this is not one of the, this will come out later. And maybe there is some other features that they're considering, but to have two different kind of specific features, both from the Communications Compliance Center to be canceled, that in my gut makes me think it was maybe like engineering difficulties or execution difficulties. But it's somewhat unusual to have them cancel features with no real indication of like they're going another direction or something with it. Exactly. Tamara, you want to cover the last two for us?
No, go ahead.
Sure. So basically, the last two we have are Microsoft Search, earn Microsoft rewards when using a work or school account. So this was basically users in your organization could basically earn what they called Microsoft reward points, which signed into select 365 services, specifically Search with Bing. Their organization and work or school account, they could then get these points. This item is being postponed and will be added back to the roadmap when appropriate. I assume they're going to have some sort of bigger picture thing where it's like you can get credit for doing stuff. This seems like, kind of silly to me, but whatever. I'm sure people always like getting points and stuff like that. It seems like as you're using more stuff, they're going to give you reward points. And with those reward points, maybe you can upgrade specific new features or get access to applications or something like that. So removing it for now, but this one they do state will be added back to the roadmap when appropriate. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was like as some bigger picture plan they had.
Yeah, this one I found kind of interesting because I do the Microsoft rewards on my personal account. And, you gather the points, you answer like quiz or questions or whatever, and eventually you get enough points. It's like, hey, Amazon gift certificate. Yay. It's nothing major, but it's kind of fun. And when they said they were going to do that for work accounts, I'm like, that's interesting because it's really not something that benefits the organization. It's more something that's really personal. So I was a little surprised that they rolled that out to a more professional level and have people do that. But like you said, it's been postponed. It'll be added back when appropriate. I don't know what when appropriate means, but yeah, I was a little surprised to see it focused on work stuff to begin with.
Yeah, I can see that becoming a real problem with the DoD environment.
Oh, yeah. So, and then the final one was, okay.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yammer, establish official communities, update community settings on web for communities and all company communities. That's also been canceled. That's also not given us a reason why, much like they did with the Microsoft Search one that we just talked about. So again, if you were looking for whatever established official communities would mean in the Yammer context, that's not going to show up. And right now, there doesn't look like there's any guidance as to when it might be coming back or how it might change when it actually gets implemented. So, and that's it.
Well, thank you for joining us, guys. We appreciated getting to share the updates with you. Quite a few updates this week compared to how it normally is sometime. But like I said, we just passed the conference, so not the most surprising. We will all be back with you guys next week. I think Jen will be back next week.
Yes.
So hopefully you'll have the whole gang back together. But until then, hopefully you guys enjoyed talking about some of the updates with us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye, everyone.
I know.